Game 7. Welcome to the Hoops Rehab Show on a Sunday night after Game 7, which was epic, at the same time, devastating. How you doing, Eric?
Pretty good, man. It's I guess we wrapped up the 24-25 season tonight, Game 7, as you said. A little bittersweet, obviously for Indiana fans and just for us basketball fans in general. But things are pretty good. How about yourself? How you doing?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's always tough to end the season, but to get a Game 7 at an NBA Finals doesn't really happen that often. Last one was 9 years ago, so that was cool to see. But man, some things to get into throughout this show. But as always, let's just start off with some business. We got our handles at Game Injury Doc and at Eric B. Mack. You can follow us on all social media platforms. We also have the Hoops Rehab Show YouTube page and Instagram. So please follow, subscribe, comment, share, do all that good work there. And then, as always, after the show, we will upload the pod to wherever you get your podcasts. That is the Hoops Rehab Show. And like we always want, please comment. We're live on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. So whatever platform that you're using, please interact with the show. Let us know what your thoughts are on Game 7, Tyrese Haliburton's injury, or even just talking about the end of the season and what happens next year. But as always, everybody's, let's get it cracking. All right, Eric. Let's get right into Game 7. Obviously, last game of the year with all the marbles on the line. What was your initial reaction to starting the game, and then as that first quarter happened and you see Tyrese go down? How you doing?
This is going to go many directions, and I know we're going to really break it down. I guess first I just have to start off like OKC Thunder. They're the champs. Congratulations to them. Well deserved. Best team all year, 68 wins, another double-digit victory. Just have to kind of start right there. SGA, Shai was MVP of the regular season, MVP of the finals, scoring leader, correct, right, for the year?
Yes. Yep.
So, I mean, look, he had a phenomenal year, and so did the Thunder. So I first have to say that. It doesn't matter how you win it, how you get there, who you play. The point is there's one final team hosting that Larry O'Brien trophy, and that was them. And so, I mean, they kind of did what they did in the third quarter, where a lot of folks were feeling sorry for Indiana, and I'm sure they did a little bit too. But at the end of the day, they regrouped at halftime. It was a close game all first half. Indiana was up by 1 at the half, if I'm not mistaken, and OKC put on one of those patented runs, outscored them 34-20 in the third quarter. Caused havoc, caused turnovers, scored off those turnovers. And sure, Indiana made a little push at the end, but it was a little too late. And OKC wrapped this thing up. What did you see out there?
Yeah, I mean, just let's start with the beginning, right? Indiana was in it to win it from the beginning of the game, 100%. From the beginning of the jump. Tyrese hit 3 threes. He hits his third three. They call a timeout. He's getting pumped. And then immediately after that, goes down with that same type of play that he injured the calf on, just pushing off on it and kind of going towards the ground. And immediately, based on his reaction, my thoughts were the damn Achilles. Like, just based on what we've already discussed throughout the last week or so. Really since Game 2, when we kind of saw where the tape was, even though they were saying ankle, more than likely he was dealing with some sort of tightness, soreness there. And then when he ended up straining the calf, we were always concerned about the Achilles. And that's something that, no matter what, he's a warrior and he's going to try to play, but that was just always going to be in the back of everybody's mind. All you wanted to do is see him get through the game and just get on to next season, rehab, and be done with it, no matter what the result was. And unfortunately, we didn't see that.
Yeah, he was about 38 to 40 minutes of game time to get into the off season, win or lose, and obviously having either a big chip on his shoulder going into next year or trying to go back to back. And so, I mean, we were, you were all over it. I obviously added my 2 cents too. Just didn't want to really throw that in the universe, but we've seen it in the past, a la Kevin Durant, who's a name we may talk about later. But, with his injury in 2019, where he had that calf injury, came back, tore his Achilles. And, there's a list. I mean, obviously with Tatum, we didn't really know about any pre-existing injuries. So that was a little different, but we thought it was a possibility, and it came at the absolute worst time. First quarter, it was about to be a grinded out game. You could just tell. And man, I don't know about you, but I feel like the life got like sucked out of I don't want to say the arena because it was in Oklahoma, but it still did a little bit. But just kind of, I don't know. It was just weird. It went from like being pumped up about a game 7 to like, man, is this really happening? So I don't know what your kind of initial thought was with that.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell by the crowd's reaction. Nobody wants to see that in a game 7. Everybody knew if he went down, more than likely it was a serious injury, right?
Absolutely.
And you could tell by even OKC, right? They struggled to kind of understand what they need to do, because at that point, you try to take advantage of him not being on the court, and it was hard for them to do that. And Indiana, man, you have to give them so much credit. They just never give up. And in that first half, the way they kept going in that game, you're like, they actually might win this without Tyrese. And just for them to be in it like that was just beyond amazing. Shows what kind of coach they have, shows what type of players they have. And then when they got into the second half, right, and OKC was able to kind of just sit back, have probably talk about it, maybe even have players talk about the injury, because it does loom big for everybody. Everybody in the NBA, they're a fraternity, right? It's you don't want to see anybody go down like that, especially when it's one of the star players. So I think they were able to kind of regroup and then came out in the third quarter and played OKC defense. And that's what they do. They changed the lineup to have Caruso in there. Caruso was creating havoc. Lou Dort was freaking amazing all night, like usual. And they kind of took it from there.
Yeah, I thought like you could never not have a halftime, obviously, but I thought this time around the halftime was like the worst thing that could happen to Indiana, because I thought both teams were pretty shell shocked. I felt both teams were kind of like filling each other out after that. And when you're, I guess, technically not as like talented as the other team, you look for any advantage. And I think that was their advantage, that it was just like nobody really knew what to expect going forward. And to your point, where you would think maybe Indiana would have a chance to regroup, it was actually the Thunder, where they're like, okay, we know he's not going to be there. Maybe we got to change some things up a bit. We saw a lot of turnovers in that third quarter. So the Pacers were really missing their point guard out there. And so I think halftime was like the best thing ever for the Thunder, because as you said, regroup. It made Indiana probably sit there and think a little bit. They probably heard the news right at halftime, they could probably gather what's happening, but when you're playing, you don't really probably think about it. But when you're sitting there for 15 minutes in the back and, maybe you see Haliburton and you're like, man, you start thinking a bit. And so I think it's a little bit of that. And then just the Thunder were like, guys, you're one half away against an injured team that really probably shouldn't have been there before. We gotta win this one. I don't know if we're going to be a dynasty. I don't know if we're going to win others, but this chance that we have in front of us, we may not have it again, right? And so I'm pretty sure that's what coach was telling them. And they took advantage of the situation and got it done.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine when Indiana went in the locker room, had to see Tyrese.
Yeah,
they probably all knew what it was. And that had to be just looming on the team, right? It's devastating, right? So it's hard to galvanize and regroup and go after 15 minutes of kind of dealing with that. So you got to give them credit for what they did in the fourth quarter, kind of cut it close and got down to I think they got down to 8 or 9 points. It almost made that run, but they just didn't have that in them to fully do what they've been doing all playoffs long. But like you said, I think that halftime, if they could have just not gone on into a halftime and kept playing, it could have been a different game. It's unfortunate that we just didn't get to see the game 7 with full health like we wanted. But kudos to OKC because somebody has to win no matter what. And my question for you now is, and we've talked about this before, is OKC the next great dynasty?
I think when a team wins a championship, and particularly a team like this who's young and they have just a lot ahead of them. I mean, a lot of their guys are, third season, a lot of their top players. And so I got to say, like, I think they're going to be in the mix. I think the next 3 or 4 years, they're going to be probably top 1 or 2 seed in the West. And if you are a top 1 or 2 seed in the West, you got home court almost throughout the playoffs, you're going to have a good shot. And I think in this day and age, in today's NBA, it's even tougher to win back to back. I think they're going to probably sense that next year that it's going to be a tougher run. Although, you know what? I haven't really seen, I've seen a little chatter, but I think the best thing about this run is there's going to be some talk, right, about the run, who they faced. Haliburton was injured. What would have happened if he played? They didn't deserve to win. The way they kind of like foul bait. They're kind of slowly turning into villains in my eyes, which is interesting. And that's not always a bad thing. I think that's a good thing for a team that needs a little bit of motivation, because that's what's really tough about winning 2, maybe 3-peat, right? Or maybe winning 2 in 3 years or 3 in 4 years, is that drive, right? That first one you really want. And now some guys are going to want to get paid. Some guys are going to, maybe cut corners here and there because they've already won a chip or 2. So for me, I would say there's one name that I think could take that next step, and is Chet Holmgren. If he really truly becomes that like 2A, 2B, 3, he was really good defensively, but he was a little inconsistent offensively throughout the playoffs. Man, if he takes that like next step, which would be year 4, then look out. I think they definitely have a run in them. What about you?
Yeah, I think overall they have the making of a dynasty. They do the players, the trio basically of SGA, Williams, and Chet. And then you just have this team chemistry that is just unheard of right there, right? And you also have Caruso, who's like the unsung hero, and he's signed up for the next 4 years. Yep. I think the hardest thing for them will be that they'll be in the West. I mean, the West is going to be completely loaded next year. They may as well not even have an Eastern Conference at this point.
I know.
I mean,
it's crazy.
With Jason Tatum, Lillard, and Tyrese all going down with Achilles tears in the playoffs, this literally leaves you with Cleveland, New York, and Philly was awful last year. But that's saying if they somehow can be healthy, Philly team. And then from that point on, all the rest of the teams, maybe the Magic actually will probably be a top 3 seed at this point because they have the chemistry and the youth. More than likely, they'll be a top 3 seed. But other than that, you don't have that much out there. And then when you look at the West, I mean, KD just got traded to the Rockets, who were the 2nd seed. So that's the team that's right behind you. And they just loaded up with KD. You got the Lakers, who are going to come back with Luka and make some moves that they're going to become better. Minnesota's still going to be there, right? People are going to be probably trying to count them out, but they're still going to be there. And you can go on
Golden
and on
State,
about
Dallas.
Golden State, Golden State with Jimmy Butler a full year. Dallas with Anthony Davis, Cooper, and then Kyrie possibly coming back towards the mid-season to the end. You name it.
Denver.
I think that, Jesus Christ.
Denver.
I mean, it's going to be completely loaded from 1 to 8. And so I think that will be the toughest thing for them, is that they have to battle the West.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, you kind of steal the words from my mouth. That was one thing I thought of, is if you're kind of wanting to be a dynasty, or you have the nucleus for it, which I believe the Thunder do, the West is just makes it tough. I mean, there's a reason why there's been what now 7 or 8 different champions every year. And so, it's because of a little bit more parity, because of the tough Western Conference. East was like definitely the weaker of the two conferences. It's been that way for a while. And with these 3 injuries, it's even that much more. I think you spoke to the few teams that could be still up there. If the Boston keeps their core other than Tatum, I think they'll be respectable. And I think they can, still obviously be a kind of a tough opponent. But I mean, to get to the finals or something, that probably would be asking a lot. It's the Thunder are going to be big-ish favorites going into next year, but in that gauntlet of a Western Conference, it's not going to be easy. But you got to get one of those top 3 seeds, right?
I was about to say, you read my mind. Eric, we're going to give that stat one last time, but now it is officially refreshed. What is the stat, Eric?
And this one, it came very, very close. I'm not going to deny that. So it was, I believe, 76 out of the 78 champs coming into these playoffs were top 3 seed from either conference, 1, 2, or 3. We know that Thunder were a 1, Pacers were a 4. Obviously we know now the Thunder won that. So now it's 77 out of 79. So they had home court game 7 of the finals. And so it is important. It is important for sure. We didn't even talk about this, but I know Indiana's got to be even kicking themselves even more about game 4 now, right? Because you went longer than you needed to, had an injury, but I mean, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, it is very important to get a top seed. Indiana defied the odds a bit, which is not common. But at the end of the day, the ruckus crowd of OKC in a game 7 got it done. So chalk another one up. 1, 2, 3.
So remember for next year, if your team is in a top 3 seed, 77 out of 79 NBA champions have been a top 3 seed. So there you go. I mean, we just got to leave it there. And that's what I think. It does matter to have home court, and having home court in a game 7 is obviously important.
Yeah. So there's teams at home are 16-4 now in game 7s in the finals. So it definitely does matter. And the Thunder got to 100 points. So I don't think we talked about it, but all the finals game 7s had been under 100, both teams, since the 88 finals. And so Thunder just crept over 100 to get another double-digit victory, which is crazy. But
yeah.
Yep.
All right. So I'm gonna get to a question from our audience here.
Yes, sir.
Or not really a question, but more of a statement. Haliburton going out is the only reason they won. Now, I want to pose this to you, Eric, because I hate talking in hypotheticals because it really doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
If Haliburton stayed healthy this whole game, does Indiana have a championship?
I think it's a completely different game. I think it's close. And I think Indiana has showed that they can play a close game. And they've pretty much, throughout the playoffs, been the victor, when it comes to close games. So it's tough. I don't want to go out here and say, it was going to happen. But the complexion of the game completely changed. So I guess you can say the reason they lost is because he was out. That was a big reason. And so, I mean, you look, OKC fans are not going to care. The Thunder are not going to care. There's always going to be those asterisks. I mean, we know as Laker fans about that from 2020 with the bubble. I don't care. We could have played in Mars. It didn't matter where the playoffs were. Each team every team had the same. They were all in the bubble, right? And so this is a little different. You can't really control injuries. You can look at Boston's run last year, right? Indiana beat the Knicks last year. They were depleted. And then, Boston went through some kind of like depleted teams as well. And so, anywho, I think it made a big difference. Could you say flat out that you think Indiana would have won with him in there?
I can't for sure say that, but what I would say is I think that changed the whole dynamic of the game because of how they started. And would they have withstand? Because OKC was going to make a third quarter push where their defense was going to create crazy havoc. And regardless, I think that was going to be trouble for Haliburton because of just all the energy that he would have to spend. And, you're still looking at hopefully not getting injured at that point. I just don't know if they would have had enough to withstand that run in the third, regardless if they had Haliburton. I do think for sure, a healthy Haliburton this series is completely different. And like we've said from game 4, that was where they lost the series. Because if they would have went up 3-1, then all they needed to do is win 1 out of the next 3 games. And this is before Haliburton strained his calf, right? So this could have been like, all right, he strained his calf. We go back into game 6 and they did what they did in game 6 and the championship is theirs. So it's so hard to play the hypothetical game of like, if we won this game, if we lost this game, if somebody didn't get injured, there's nothing we can do about that. OKC is the champ. And unfortunately, it went down this way. And nobody ever wants to see an injury like this.
Yeah, look, for what we know, I mean, Haliburton hit those 3 3-pointers. Maybe he was ready to go on an all-time heater, right? We never know. Like, maybe he was like, he's just going to have one of those games. He hits like 8 or 9 threes, and you're like, damn, like, that's why Indiana won. But sad to say, we'll never, ever know. It's tough. I know the folks of Indiana are going to always remember this team because it's the furthest they've ever gotten into an NBA championship. They lost in 6 in the year 2000 against the Lakers, and so it wasn't this close. And so, yeah, man, game 4 is where it was at. You got to give it up to the Thunder in terms of game 4s because they went into Denver down 2-1 and won a game 4. Went into Indiana down 2-1 and won in game 4. And that is a sign of a championship team. You look at the history of like NBA champions. It's not always like a 15-16-0 run. It's always, there's always that series or two that's really tough where you might be down 2-1, you might be down 1-0. And so they're just another team that did that. And so they went and took that game in game 4, but you could argue Indiana gave it to them. And it's going to be a long off season. I think they'll be able to hang their hat on their season probably as like the summer goes on, or maybe when they're done with their careers. But for now, it's got to sting, especially knowing they're that close. And Haliburton was a tough one.
Yeah, that's a tough loss, and it's going to be even tougher because I wanted to take a deeper dive into the Tyrese Haliburton injury, and they obviously haven't said it officially that he tore his Achilles, but when you look back at the video, and I was able to kind of slow it down and look at the play, and they showed the replay, you can see the ripple from the Achilles all the way up the calf, which is typically a sign of Achilles tear, unfortunately. And what we kind of talked about before, right? When you have a calf strain, especially an acute calf strain, the muscle is inhibited right away, which means it's not going to fire correctly and it's not going to be as strong as it was before. So if you put that together, you put weakness there, there's going to be more stress on your Achilles tendon because the calf itself isn't as strong to withstand that. And that's essentially what happened. And when he pushed off and made a move that he's probably made 100 billion times, it couldn't take it and it tore his Achilles. And it's something you just never want to see, but we kind of knew the risk, and I'm sure he knew the risk from what people were telling him, his doctors. My thing, again, I get a little bit perturbed because I'm in the medical field. I'm a physical therapist. I've been around athletes. I kind of understand the game. When they say the medical team cleared him from what? Because obviously he has a calf strain. You cleared him to just say, yeah, you could get injured, you could not, but this is now your risk. Why don't we rephrase that? The medical team advises him that these are the risks, but the player wants to play, and that is his choice to make that. Because now we're getting to the point where it's like, oh, how did the medical team clear him?
Right.
Likely they told him these are the risks. And if they did not, that's not good.
Yeah, I know we talked about it last show, and it's such a good point. It makes it sound good on paper, but it also makes like that doctor or staff like look like idiots too, right? Which is not the case. I mean, they know, and he probably knew the risk, and they could come out and say, hey, like, this is what he has. And if it was a regular season, he would be out 3 weeks or 4 weeks. He would not be playing. And he is hoping that he can get through this game 6 and then now game 7 and just get to the offseason. And it's such a bummer because no injuries, like we don't like any injuries, but it's like, it just sucks that it's one of these injuries that it's not like, all right, like he got hurt, but he'll kind of be ready for training camp, or he'll be ready for, by Christmas or whatever. It's like he hurt it at the latest possible point of a regular season the year before. And so we know he's going to be out next year, most likely. And so that's just another bummer because I get it, man. Like you're in his position. You may not ever get here again. Game 7. Look, it's you're going to get paid regardless. So it's not about that. But it's like, let me just get through these last 48 minutes. And man, he just couldn't quite get there, fortunately.
He's 25 years old, about to be in his prime as a superstar. And he now goes from a game 7 in the NBA Finals to likely not playing next year at all. Yep. And then not knowing what the Indiana team looks like 2 years from, or, after next season.
Yeah.
And that is devastating for a young player, and is devastating for Indiana as a franchise, and is devastating for Indiana as fans. Like I would be just, and that's what I'm saying. Like when you take these risks, right? Could they have played as well in game 6 without him and probably won? Likely, right? The way TJ McConnell was playing.
Home court, home crowd.
Is it worth losing your star player to what used to be one of the worst injuries you can possibly have? And who knows if this changes his career or trajectory? We don't know if it's going to change how Tatum comes back. Yes, the advancement in technology and advancement in surgeries have gotten better, and players have looked better, like Kevin Durant, but that is not the norm. Like Achilles are still, don't get it twisted. Achilles injuries are still difficult to come back from, no matter what.
Yeah, I that's so true. I think we just look at the age, and we've seen a little bit of more data now, and some have come back strong, but some have not. And so, it's not like quite like Tommy John, where you get that first Tommy John surgery as a pitcher, and you typically can come back. It's not quite there. And so it's kind of sad that it's starting to become like this thing where it's like, oh, all right, well, we got this advancement in medicine, and it's all good. Just get it, strengthen it up, take that year off, and be back. And so, no, it's for a team like this, for a team like Boston with Tatum. Obviously, we know Damian Lillard is kind of in the tail end of his career. It's tough. And so I think what like Haliburton and what the Pacers are kind of telling us is that if Haliburton would have played and they were up 10 and he tore his Achilles with a couple of minutes left and they won the championship, it would have been worth it. And so what ended up happening was he hurt it in the first quarter. They lost. He's done. And they're going to have to sleep with that decision for a long time.
Yeah. And I know he knew the risk, but is there a point where the franchise steps in to guard against these type of things? Or are you in the corner that a player should be able to choose whatever they want to do? That's my biggest question, because I personally, if this is my client, my patient, I do this all the time. Like I tell people, hey, like if you're running on this knee or you're doing this, you have a big chance of injuring, especially my athletes, especially my high school kids, my college kids. Like I'm letting them know, like, hey, these are the risks. Like I advise you shouldn't be playing until this is properly healed. But obviously the stakes are just totally different when it comes to a regular season game or anything to do with the finals.
Well, you know what's going to take, all you guys listening and then all you guys that are going to be listening later on, it's going to take people to stop with, oh, I can't believe he didn't play. I can't believe, oh, his calf. I mean, come on. Aaron Gordon played with the ripped hamstring, or, oh, Michael Jordan had 117-degree, fever in the finals or whatever the hell it was, right? That's what it's going to take. And I feel like, honestly, that's part of the reason why these players play is they know they're going to get killed, sorry, so to speak, if they don't play unless they have like broken bones, right? And so that's what it's going to come down to, is going to take these players and these organizations to look at themselves in the mirror and say, are we doing what's right for our employee, right? Because they are an employee of the team, of the team, so to speak. I mean, we could be, over exaggerating, right? Because he could have like been fine and we wouldn't have been talking about this. But at the end of the day, we talked about this. I mean, you brought it up 5 days ago. It wasn't a big secret. And look what happened. So again, I think it's going to take just getting over the fact that people are going to talk shit about you not playing or maybe going out early because your calf is hurting. That's what I got to say about that.
Yeah, social media essentially is everybody putting pressure on these players. I would say like this, at least you started hearing in the chatter of, we obviously talked about it, but like the KD, you guys remember KD, he tore his Achilles. Like we heard
now
this
we're seeing
more,
some data. Yeah.
right. We've seen this before and we've seen it in the finals. That's what makes this thing so much more devastating, is that we knew this could be the outcome. And man, it's just hard to kind of get over. And for me, I'm putting it on both my, media side versus my physical therapy side, where I'm like, hey, this is what I would say to my client patient. Like, I wouldn't want you to play. However, this is pro sports, Game 7. These are the finals. They're going to play through whatever they want to play through. So it's a good question whether or not franchises can stop a player from playing, or is this ultimately up to the player and their decision solely because they know the risk?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have thought, I mean, you never know, that if this was early in the playoffs, maybe they would have wrapped them up. But we've seen that too. We've seen it happen early in the playoffs this year, to be honest. So I'd like to think it was because it's like all they had left was 2 games, and just gotta just hope and pray that he gets through the 2 games, which he didn't. But it's it is what it is. I hope it's we're seeing examples of it now of what can go wrong. And look, these things could happen to players that don't have these existing injuries. So like, don't get me wrong. It's not just that, but when you have those injuries and it's like very common that somebody may get a different injury from the injury they have, hopefully we start to think twice and 3 times about it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So congrats to OKC.
Yeah. Great season.
I feel for Indiana. I feel for Tyrese. And I hope they're going to be back. But again, congrats to OKC and SGA for winning the MVP. Obviously, they're champs for a reason. Now, let's get into the other big news of the day, which now seems like, wait, did this actually happen all day?
Last 12 hours or whatever. It's crazy.
But Kevin Durant was traded to the Houston Rockets, which I don't know if you guys are watching us about a month ago, but Eric B. Mack said that is likely what's going to happen, and he wouldn't be surprised if KD was in a Rockets uniform. So how are you feeling about the trade, Eric?
So I think what did KD hurt towards the end of the season? Was it his ankle or what?
Yeah, like he had an ankle injury, sprain.
Sprain, right? I think we knew like that was going to be his last game on Phoenix. That was pretty obvious. And then the last like few weeks, we knew it was going to happen. We just didn't know when or where, and obviously what point in the off season. And of course, it has to happen the morning of Game 7 of the finals. Like, I think these finals just get stretched out, that it's hard to just like keep information until after, I guess. But yeah, I think look, if Houston, we talked about them, we thought that, we had fun with that team, towards the end of the year. And, we know what you thought about them for sure, Doc. And yeah, I think coming back with the same exact team, in theory, yes, you are a year more mature, another year of playing with each other. But I just kind of saw potentially like the same thing happening to them as it happened this year. So they had to make a big move, and the big move that they could make was getting Kevin Durant. And so I think it'll be good for them. I think they're going to be a top team. I know Durant's a little older, but he's been, regardless of like what's kind of been happening in Phoenix and I guess the Nets before that, he's had a good couple seasons. And so they finally now have that one guy they can go to at the end of the games, which was a big worry of ours. Who's going to get the ball in a close game in the fourth, right? And so they have that now. They got his length, they got his defense, obviously a great shooter. So I think it's a good move. I mean, we'll see how it like pans out in terms of how the team does, but I think they're better today than they were yesterday. What about you?
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I think we both thought all along that Jalen Green would be involved in this trade.
Yeah.
And I think overall Rockets get an A+ for this trade because they kept Amen Thompson and Sengun. Like you kept your two cornerstones, I think, of this franchise, and added a perennial all-star Hall of Famer in Kevin Durant and champion. And I think they couldn't be any better than they got. And you look like, oh, did you sacrifice some defense and athletic ability by adding losing Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks? To me, Dylan Brooks is on the tail end of his defensive prowess. Like, I don't think he's going to be just this stud, first team All-NBA defender. I think Amen Thompson is for sure. So that's what you're going to make up with that. And I think KD provides a lot of length. He's not going to be like, you're not going to ask him to be the best defender on the primary person on the other team, but you got Amen Thompson for that.
Amen. They didn't let go of Amen Thompson.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was huge for them, right? And you have Van Fleet that you're probably going to keep and all that kind of stuff. Signed Steven Adams. So you have a lot of veteran mix. Right. And I think off the bench and kind of the younger guys like Reed Shepherd is going to get the play now. You still have Terry Easton, Cam Whitmore. You still got a lot of athletic young players. So they should be fine on that front. Now, what in the hell are the Phoenix Suns doing? I'm going to tell you something right now. And this has been pissing me off for a long time. Because number one, they got to the finals with Chris Paul, right? Correct? They got the finals with Devin Booker, right? Yeah. They play against Milwaukee. What is this? 2021. Yeah. They haven't had a point guard since Chris Paul. And they continue to not address the point guard position. They have wanted Devin Booker to play it or whoever, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant. You add all these players, but never get a point guard to play with Devin Booker, which got you to the NBA Finals. You're telling me right now you're going to pair Jalen Green and Jalen Green and Devin Booker, and obviously you're going to get rid of Bradley Beal or whatever you're going to do with it. I hope. And Dylan Brooks. You're just going to have 5 shooting guards.
Yeah, like I get like positionless basketball, but this is like an extreme. They've totally underrated the point guard position for some damn reason. Look, I get it. When they had those 3 players, like they didn't have a lot of wiggle room, but why did you get those damn 3 players? Again,
when you had those 3 players, you had no point guard. Like literally were going to just get rid of that position and say we could just dribble the ball with anybody. And as you can see in the NBA Finals is you got Tyrese, obviously, who's a great point guard. You got Nembhard, who's can be a point guard, off guard. And on the other side, you have SGA, right? You have these players that are just perennial guards, point guards, shooting guards that are dominating the game. Like you have to have a point guard, somebody at least that plays defense that can distribute the ball. If you're going to play that with Devin Booker. And I don't know what they're doing. I hope they probably move Jalen Green to somebody else. Not to say that Jalen Green is a bad player. I think he's a great player. He's not going to fit with Devin Booker. I'm going to tell you that right now. Those two are not going to fit together.
Yeah, they're like ruining Devin Booker's career here in Phoenix. It's crazy.
If I'm Devin Booker, you best believe before Wednesday when the draft is going to happen, I'm putting my request in to get the hell out of the Phoenix, Arizona area.
Yeah, since Matt Ishbia, whatever his name is. Yeah, since he took over, I mean, it's like he's just star hungry. Yeah, Devin Booker, we saw what he did with Chris Paul. We saw what he did in the Summer Olympics last year. He was like a key nucleus to that team where you had guys like Ant Edwards, Hallie, right? Even Tatum that didn't even get big minutes. And so this is his time, and the Suns have really, really hindered his career. And so is he going to want to be there for a complete rebuild? I don't know. Cause they need to do that. They have to do that. They got to get rid of Bradley Beal somehow, some way, buy him out. I don't know what they have to do, but they got to acquire some draft picks. They have to go in full tank mode and go in full tank mode fast. And
yes,
does Devin Booker want to go along for that ride? I wouldn't. So that would be interesting to see. And I know there's a lot of teams that would be, chomping at the bits to get their hands on him. And so not sure what Phoenix is doing. We know that they had to trade Durant. I don't know what other packages were out there for an expiring contract that Durant is, to be honest. And, he's obviously a vet. He's going to be 37 this year. So, there's probably only so much they could get. But man, is that organization a mess right now?
Yeah. Here, I'll just give you their projected starting lineup, and we'll finish with that.
Give it to us.
Devin Booker at point guard, Jalen Green at shooting guard, Dylan Brooks at shooting guard, Ryan Dunn and Nick Richards. No disrespect, but I don't know who Ryan Dunn is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Ryan, who he play for is going to be.
I'm kidding. I know Ryan Dunn's a nice little young player. However, does this team in the West even have a
Did they hire a coach?
You know they hired.
Hold on.
This is why I think they're in rebuild mode.
Hold on.
Do you want me to say it or no?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Sorry, Jordan. Jordan. Yeah, sorry. Hey, wish him the best. I thought it was going to be like Alvin Gentry or something like that. I was like, don't tell me so.
They are going younger. Obviously, they hired a young assistant who's definitely regarded around in the league. But at this point, you can't tell me that they shouldn't go in a full rebuild mode. I like Devin Booker. I love Devin Booker. At this point, you need to figure out how to get picks, because essentially all you got is the first round pick for this year, but you got 5 second round picks for KD, and you've given up so many to him, right? For him. So I would be in full rebuild mode, but it is what it is.
I got 4 words for Devin Booker. Go to the East.
Oh my gosh. Like, if you could think of a destination.
Miami?
Yeah. Be nice. Coach Spo in the East with Devin Booker?
Yeah, just because they're a reputable organization. Sure, you could say like, Cleveland or like some team that's like up there, Philly. Not Philly, but just for like stability standpoint, I know they would probably have to sell the farm.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much resources they'd have after that. But that's one place I thought of.
Yeah. And you could probably get back, obviously, Tyler Hero and maybe another young guy and then a bunch of picks. I think you putting Booker and Bam together would be intriguing, and maybe still have Wiggins or some sort of package there. But it should be interesting. Nonetheless, I feel like the Rockets got an A+, and the Phoenix Suns got a D in this trade. So there you go.
Yeah. See what happens.
So we got one last segment and one last schools out. That's when teams go on summer vacation because they are now done. However, it's usually just one team, but tonight we have two teams. And to me, it's bittersweet. Usually this is a very funny segment. However, I feel it's hard to be kind of funny when you saw what happened to Indiana. But, congrats. I'm going to give them a slow clap because they were probably one of the best stories you've seen in a long time. However, they will be going somewhere on vacation, hopefully a tropical beach.
Yeah.
After,
probably somewhere out of Indiana for a bit.
Using a beach ball.
We won't put the shades on. We won't go crazy.
No.
Out of respect. But it still is summer break for you guys.
So hats off to their season. Amazing season. Obviously went down to the wire and lost one of their franchise players. But nonetheless, they will be back at some point. What you think, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, so they finished 50-32. Pretty good season. They had a good second half run there to lock up that 4 seed and had an amazing run through the playoffs. Some would probably say they were underdogs in every series they played in. And so definitely the last 3, Milwaukee, then Cleveland, then New York, and then, of course, OKC. And so had a real good season. I would have liked to think this would catapult them to potentially another good year next year, especially with the East wide open, as we mentioned quite a few times. But with Haliburton most likely out the year, it's going to be tough. I know Miles Turner, I believe, is an unrestricted free agent. I think that's the main name that's out there. They might have some other guys, but that's the kind of main name in terms of unsure where he's going to end up. Maybe he just resigns with Indiana. But yeah, had a good season, had a good run, got to the very last possible day of the season and just came up short, unfortunately.
Congrats to them. Well-deserved season, and we look forward to seeing what they got in the future. Now, the last school's out officially goes to a salute to the OKC Thunder. They are the NBA champions. They can now vacation wherever the hell they want to go and party until next year when they try to repeat as NBA champions.
Yeah, most people would probably start their vacation the very next day, but for the Thunder, they're going to have their parade, I would imagine, in a couple of days. Looks like they already had the buses and merchandise ready to go for that.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be one of those. When Rick Carlisle kind of talked about that and they showed the buses, I said, oh, hell no. They did not show that footage already. And I'm sure he used that as his pregame speech. And it looked like, Indiana was, all about it, right? They're ready to bust those dudes the rest of the game. But, obviously there's an unfortunate injury with Tyrese.
Yeah, I know. It would have been something that would have been remembered forever if Indiana would have won that, and that would have been just the laugh of the league for a lot of years. Because I feel like I've never seen that. But Thunder get the last laugh. They get to use those buses, and I'm sure the city of Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, I should say, which they moved to in 2008. Obviously, we know they were the Seattle Supersonics for years and years, and so 17 years in the making. They had another finals appearance before. They had a good run with KD and James Harden and Westbrook, and now they finally got that chip. And so let's see what happens next. Our favorite time of the year coming up, especially for the teams that don't win it, the off season, right? Especially as Laker fans, that's when it starts to get hot. But yeah, I mean, I know, thanks for everyone that's listening. We started the show, about like a month before the season ended, regular season?
Actually,
late
I
March?
think we were about 3, maybe it was late March.
Yeah.
So we've been going strong for about 2 months now, and we appreciate all y'all all listening to the show, downloading the pod. We're going to continue. We're probably going to be on a Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday schedule. So about 3 times a week with a show during the off season. We have the draft coming up on Wednesday, which is crazy to already think that there's going to be a freaking draft. And so off season is going to be up and rolling pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, we know how it goes. Like especially with it going to a game 7, the draft's already Wednesday. Then we got free agency, we got some trades, and then it, around August, September, it slows down a bit. But yeah, it's been real fun. But the good news is, we're not stopping here. We're gonna continue this, and we're gonna have to, I guess, do a little bit of studying on the draft on Wednesday before Tuesday's show. And so we know he's gonna get picked number 1. That's obvious, but it's often those guys that you don't expect to get picked and end up having great careers. So that'll be good to see.
And we'll see if there's any trades to be made from now until then and during draft night. So exciting times for the offseason for everybody, teams to kind of reshape and vie for the NBA championship next year. Congrats to OKC, but it's time to get into off-season mode.
Yep, it's been real thunder. I know for you guys, you get to enjoy it, which I hope you guys all do. But for us, it's time to move on. And we got the 25-26 season in sight. Yep. It's going to be an exciting one. And so can't wait.
Let the rumors begin.
Oh, yeah.
All right, everybody. Until next time, which is likely Tuesday, the Hoops Rehab team is officially out for the 24-25 NBA season. We appreciate y'all, and we'll see you soon. Peace out,
Thanks, guys. Peace.